Hello and welcome. Here's what's happening right now. The state of relations after a pivotal first phone call.
We had a very good conversation.
What was discussed between Mark Carney and Donald Trump?
We need to put Canada first.
We're going to defend our country and defend our jobs.
Reaction and new promises from the campaign trail.
We are not for sale.
Plus anger and anxiety over an unwelcome visit.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
A significant moment in Canada-U.S. relations today. Prime Minister Mark Carney and President Donald Trump spoke for the first time leader to leader. The Prime Minister called it a constructive conversation, but informed the President that Canada won't back down on retaliatory tariffs. Here's CTV's Judy Trinh on what was discussed.
We had a very constructive discussion.
After 2 weeks of silence since being sworn in, Prime Minister Mark Carney spoke to U.S. President Donald Trump for the first time.
You know, I've always loved Canada, and we had a very good conversation with the Prime Minister. They've got an election going on, so we're going to meet after the election.
On social media, Trump referred to Carney as Prime Minister and said they would meet after the election. That collegial tone is remarkably different from how he referred to Carney's predecessor.
I call him Governor Trudeau.
For months, Trump has been threatening to turn Canada into the 51st state. At the Port of Montreal, Carney was asked if Trump was still a threat to Canadian sovereignty.
This was a call between two leaders of their respective governments, between two sovereign nations.
The trade war with the U.S. is expanding. Trump has now imposed tariffs on automobiles, along with tariffs on steel and aluminum. Carney told Trump Canada will retaliate after the White House announces its additional reciprocal tariffs on April 2nd.
This is the start of negotiations. We will see what the United States does on the 2nd of April.
After his call with Trump, Carney chaired a First Ministers meeting and updated the premiers. Some remain skeptical despite the change in Trump's tone.
I urged the Prime Minister to work with our allies around the world. The President is attacking countries everywhere right now.
The Conservative leader is also tempering his words.
I was glad to learn that the President and Prime Minister spoke today, and like all Canadians, I hope they had a successful talk.
The next round of Trump's tariffs is expected by next Wednesday. The Prime Minister says in the interim, talks between U.S. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick and Canada's International Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc will intensify, which could mean another face-to-face meeting in Washington next week. Judy Trinh, CTV News, Montreal.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre was focused on a law and order theme today, pledging to impose mandatory life sentences for mass gun smuggling, human trafficking and fentanyl trafficking. CTV's Mike Lecouture is with the Conservative campaign tonight. Mike, what more can you tell us?
Heather, according to the BC Coroner Service, of all the deaths related to unregulated drugs so far this year, fentanyl was detected in 77% of those cases. It's why Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre chose this province to announce his tough-on-crime policy. Increasing maximum sentences for certain crimes has been the cornerstone of a Conservative plan which had been previously announced. In February, Poilievre already said he would bring in life sentences for anyone convicted of trafficking more than 40 milligrams of fentanyl. Today, he said that same sentence would be applied to anyone found guilty of 5 or more counts of human trafficking or someone who was convicted of importing or exporting 10 or more illegal firearms. Poilievre also promised to close down safe consumption sites and instead put that money into other resources.
To treatment and recovery, to bring our loved ones home drug-free, detox, counseling, group therapy, physical exercise, yoga, sweat lodges for First Nations, job placement and housing to get people off the street, out of the tents, into homes.
While Poilievre did address that phone call between U.S. President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Mark Carney, Canada-U.S. relations has not been central to his campaign. His team says that Poilievre is instead focusing on the issues that matter most to Canadians. Heather?
All right, Mike, thank you. As for the NDP, their message today was aimed at solving Canada's housing crisis with a promise to ban corporate landlords from buying affordable homes. CTV's Rachel Aiello joins us now. Rachel, Jagmeet Singh's campaign promise sounding familiar.
Heather, we're not even one full week into this election campaign, and already the NDP are reviving promises. Today in downtown Toronto, for the second time since hitting the trail, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh made an announcement about cracking down on corporate landlords. Standing in front of an apartment complex, Singh was joined by the same woman who he featured in a Tuesday campaign stop. Erin, a tenant in a building run by the same firm Liberal leader Mark Carney used to work for. There, Singh announced a trio of renter-centric policies that his team asserted were new to the campaign. He said the NDP would ban corporations from buying up affordable rental buildings, cut off corporate landlords from certain tax treatments, and boost a fund that helps nonprofits purchase affordable apartments. But today's proposals closely echo promises Singh has made before. Should you not be spending every single day unveiling new ideas?
People need to know the way we're going to attack the serious challenges we're up against. And to have the attention of a campaign to highlight something as important as banning corporations from buying affordable homes is something really important. It's something that no one else is going to talk about. You're not going to hear Mark Carney talk about it.
It's not just policy that the party seems to be recycling. Singh's campaign slogan, "In it for you," is the same one he used during the 2019 federal election. Singh's campaign is traveling back to Ottawa this evening, boarding the plane that the party has rented for the first time in this campaign. Unlike the Liberals and Conservatives, the NDP have no plans to wrap theirs in party branding for this election, saying they are choosing to spend that money elsewhere. Heather?
Rachel, thank you. For more insight, we turn to CTV's chief political correspondent, Vassy Kapelos. Vassy, let's start with that call between the Prime Minister and the U.S. President. Donald Trump seemed to immediately praise Mark Carney on Truth Social following their call. So what do you make of that?
Yeah, it feels like, Heather, we're in the twilight zone. Every other time we talk about a call between a prime minister of this country and the president of the United States in Donald Trump, it's a very different reaction that we are attempting to analyze. It's hard to know exactly, to be honest, what to make of it. I think, look, any day that the president of the United States is not referring to us as the 51st state or not referring to the prime minister as the governor of Canada is certainly a better day than if it were otherwise. But I also think I just spoke to, for example, John Bolton, who used to be the national security advisor to Donald Trump. And he said, cautioned a little bit, don't overread too much into one positive reaction. Although Donald Trump does base a lot on the personal relationship he develops with other world leaders, much more so than any kind of policy basis, that's for sure. You still never know with him. And certainly if anyone knows that, I think it's Canadians from coast to coast to coast. So there is some perhaps cautious optimism that this leads to something more productive. Mark Carney, for example, talking about the start of formal negotiations, perhaps, after the election, should he win, because remember, he might not. It could be someone else leading those negotiations. But even that seems like a development other than just going back and forth, tit for tat, insult for insult, sort of what we had seen, over a number of weeks, largely lodged, of course, by Donald Trump, but otherwise that seemed to characterize the relationship for a while.
All right, Vassy, let's talk about the campaign trail quickly. It is day 6 today, of course. So what stood out to you in this first week?
I think exactly what we thought going in, best laid plans, right? The first half of this week was all about affordability. And I thought, hey, maybe Trump won't be the X factor that we thought he would be. Then came those tariffs on Wednesday night and the reaction since. And here we are back at kind of where we started, which is Trump as the X factor in this campaign. Goodness knows how exactly he impacts it, but he will have an impact. I think we can be sure one weekend, Heather.
Vassy, thanks for your insight.
Coming up on CTV National News. The people of Quebec City prepare for a historic federal election.
We need to be allies. We're neighboring countries.
What traditional campaign issues are off the table and what voters are talking about.
Je voulais que ce soit M. Carney qui rentre.
Tonight on CTV National News and ctvnews.ca.
A Toronto baseball fan is speaking out after being thrown out of the Blue Jays season opener over what he was wearing. CTV's John Benavalli-Rao is down by Rogers Centre in Toronto with the story generating outrage. John.
Heather, it's a wild story. Longtime Jays fan Dan Begley was here at yesterday's game, and he thought he'd bring along his beloved Canada is Not for Sale hat. He put that hat on for us as he told CTV News about what happened next. He was in the stands when an usher came up and told him the hat violated a policy about political statements, and he was told to take it off or at least turn it around.
I said, well, I'm not turning it around and I'm not taking it off. I said, no, I'm not doing either.
Begley says things escalated. He was then kicked out of the game, taken out by security guards.
When I came out of that stadium, I was humiliated. I was lonely, standing out there. It was awful.
Now, the Blue Jays later apologized. In a statement, they said they made a mistake and have taken steps to ensure it doesn't happen again. Begley was offered tickets to another game, and he's getting lots of support, including a call from Ontario's Premier today saying he was proud of Begley. Hat issues have come up at games in the U.S., where some fans have been denied entry to stadiums for wearing MAGA hats. But Begley says his hat, which was made popular by the Premier, is hardly negative or denigrating.
I think it was a very bad judgment call by somebody, but you know, we're Canadians. They apologized, they made it right. I'm okay.
And Begley, he plans to be back here for a game on Monday, proudly sporting his hat. Heather.
All right, John, thank you. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and his wife arrived for an uninvited trip to Greenland today. The controversial visit comes as Donald Trump continues to insist the U.S. needs to acquire the autonomous Danish territory. CTV's Heather Wright now with more on the visit and the prickly reception from locals. Heather.
Well, Heather, not much of a welcome mat laid out for U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance as he arrived in Greenland today, where he reiterated Donald Trump's comments that the United States needs to get the island under its control.
How we doing? It's cold as here. Nobody told me.
The U.S. Vice President arrived at an American military base in Greenland today, visiting troops amid an escalating push by Donald Trump to take over the territory.
I think we'll go as far as we have to go. We need Greenland.
Greenland is an autonomous territory that is part of Denmark, with many uninterested in joining the United States.
We don't want you here. People are getting more worried. I'm getting more worried. Is he actually going to take over Greenland?
Uproar to the second couple's trip to Greenland forced officials to scale back the trip, with the Danish government angry the original itinerary was planned without their consultation. The group was supposed to visit other parts of the island, but instead remained at the military outpost.
I'll say that the colonel was...
Still, Vance did not tone down his remarks.
Denmark has not kept pace in devoting the resources necessary to keep this base, to keep our troops, and in my view, to keep the people of Greenland safe from a lot of very aggressive incursions from Russia, from China, and from other nations.
But experts say it's the United States that's being aggressive, acting like the authoritative states it claims to be protecting Greenland from.
Very aggressive, oppressive, using force to do what they want. And I'm sure the Greenlandish people are feeling the same way as Canadians are.
In his remarks, Vance also talked about the independence movement in Greenland, predicting that the island will move away from Denmark and closer to the United States. Heather.
CTV's Heather Wright reporting. Thanks. Hundreds of people are dead, buildings flattened, and dozens missing following a powerful 7.7 magnitude earthquake that rocked Thailand and Myanmar overnight.
Wait, the whole building collapsed.
This dashcam video shows the moment the quake triggered the collapse of a 33-story skyscraper under construction in Bangkok, more than 1,300 kilometers from the epicenter. At least 8 people were killed in the collapse. Thai authorities have declared a state of emergency. The quake also caused a rooftop pool to send water pouring down a Bangkok hotel. And crews have begun to clean up widespread damage in Myanmar, where people are still feeling the aftershocks from the major quake. At least 144 people were killed and more than 700 people injured there. Government officials have also declared a state of emergency in many areas. Tremors were also felt in India and China. Still to come on the show.
You know, just disappointed, anger, sadness.
What's behind a sudden surge in prices at the pumps and how long it'll last. The price at the pump increased overnight for people living in all 3 maritime provinces for both gas and diesel. It should come down again once the consumer portion of the federal carbon tax goes away. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth is in Halifax and looking into this. Paul, how much relief can people expect?
Heather, that depends on several factors, including the carbon tax, supply chain issues, and seasonal pricing, which could impact the cost of fuel, not just here in the east, but also across Canada. A nasty Friday morning jolt at the pumps. Gas prices jumped roughly 4 cents a litre in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick and most areas of Newfoundland and Labrador. Prince Edward Island saw a price increase of 6.9 cents.
I'm buying no matter what. They can put it up $10, you're still going to buy it.
Anger, sad, just disappointed.
Gas analyst Patrick DeHaan says it's a trend across the country.
Everyone except Manitoba and Alberta, who saw a price rise the week before. Every other province across Canada is up.
As for the more dramatic increase in Atlantic Canada,
right now, refineries are in active turnaround season, meaning that when refinery maintenance happens in one area, that refinery may supply more of the gasoline that is in that community.
DeHaan says fuel savings are on the horizon because the consumer carbon tax will soon be gone.
I would expect at least a 15-cent a liter drop fairly quickly after April 1st.
Because of the trade war, travel experts are anticipating a slowdown in tourism from Canada to the U.S. If the result from that is an increase in domestic in-Canada travel, the cost of fuel will be closely monitored, especially if people choose driving vacations over flying. Heather.
CTV's Paul Hollingsworth in Halifax. Still ahead, rough seas ahead for Atlantic fishing communities. Maritime boat builders hope to stem the tide of looming tariffs. Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith says her fireside chat with a controversial right-wing American podcast host was meaningful, and she had, quote, a great time. Smith posted this photo of her with Ben Shapiro at the event in Florida Wednesday night. She says they spoke about the Canada-U.S. trade war, including the benefits of a tariff-free relationship. The Premier's attendance has come under fire as the gala was organized by a conservative company known for its polarizing views on climate change and slavery. Before the event, Alberta's NDP leader Naheed Nenshi said it would be despicable for her to attend. As tariffs dominate headlines, it's no surprise they're all the talk in maritime fishing communities where people stand to be hard hit both by Chinese and American tariffs, and it's having an impact on the boat building industry. CTV's Sarah Plowman on how boatyard owners across the region are feeling.
All is calm in a place where lobster boats dot driveways like cars, where disaster at sea lives in the collective memory. Here, people brace for the next wave of tariffs.
We have a situation, and we have to deal with it as calmly as we can. And see what happens.
As seafood is hit by China's 25% tariff, the U.S. may do the same. Uncertainty spills from the wharves to the boatyard, where boat builders are exposed to tariffs too.
You know, we're fighters. We can go out, we can manage. We always have through hard times, and one way or another we'll figure it out.
Demand had already slowed, but this adds another hurdle. Most of these boat parts come from the U.S.
All our electrical components, probably our batteries.
And so do half of Corey Guimond's customers who are holding back.
Buyers are hesitant to purchase, not wanting to have to pay the 25% extra.
Then there's Canadian fishermen, cautious to spend with so much at stake and so much unknown.
Well, we have to be careful of what we decide to do, because we don't know what's going to happen.
The industry notes Canada's first round of retaliatory tariffs didn't have a massive impact on boat building,
but they're expected to have a bigger impact moving forward. Those who are building with steel and aluminum are feeling more of an impact from it.
Shipyard owners are trying to think differently.
We work a little harder and we get up earlier to try to figure out exactly what we need to do to keep our shipyard going and keep our people employed and make it work.
So people here wait to see if these trade tides turn.
preparing like they do every storm, preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Escuminac, New Brunswick.
After the break, campaign concerns in Quebec City. The fears of the past meet hopes for the future in one of Canada's oldest communities. Since day one of the campaign, we've been highlighting communities big and small, right across the country, to see what issues are most important to voters there. Tonight, we're in Quebec City, a place steeped in Canadian history. CTV's Geneviève Bushman hears from voters now squarely focused on the future.
Quebec is a fortified city rich with more than 400 years of history. Its ramparts encircling the old town long ago played a part in holding off an invasion during the American Revolution.
J'ai confiance, mais il y a de l'inquiétude.
Many here in the seat of the provincial government say they never imagined threats of annexation would be anything but part of a distant past. But they see this as the top priority for the next prime minister. We drop by an iconic restaurant in Old Quebec, La Bûche. It serves up traditional Quebec fare, yes, including poutine with a modern twist.
We wanted to honor our grandma's cuisine in the Sugar Shack ambience.
Quebec City is a tourism hub.
What did you want to see here?
The history. 8-year-old Asher and his parents are from New York. In fact, seated at most tables on this weekday afternoon, Americans.
I've heard a little bit about your elections. To be honest, I've kind of been sheltering myself from politics in general just because it's very negative at the moment.
People here say they're proud to show off the local traditions, the culture to the many American tourists who come here each year. But they say right now they're spending a lot more time talking about politics. Sisters Nancy and Jocelyn Tanguay say issues like Quebec nationalism are pretty much off the table. Their bond to Canada is stronger. They say they want a leader who doesn't always use negative messaging, who inspires confidence. The economy is clearly top of mind, and here many hope there's an appetite for tourism.
Quebec City is the most beautiful city in Canada, so...
Geneviève Bushman, CTV News, Quebec City.
That is our newscast for this Friday evening. Thank you for joining us. I'll be back later tonight with CTV National News at 11 for ongoing coverage. Tune in to CTV News Channel. I'm Heather Butts. Your local CTV News starts right now.
Canada's number